President Donald Trump turning his attention now to international issues. He had dinner with the Israeli Prime Minister and discussed bringing an end to the 21-month fighting in Gaza. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Barr, who's been covering politics for years now. And Alice, President Trump has sounded pretty confident about his chances for some peace, but Israel is still focused on Hamas and those hostages still in the mix. How close really are we to a breakthrough in Gaza?
Yeah, so Chesley, we know that negotiations have resumed and they were on ice for a while there. So certainly there's positive news if there's any talks underway, even if there are kind of indirect talks between Israel and Hamas. And President Trump, I think, does see a moment here when he wants to capitalize on momentum from the U.S. having forged a ceasefire between Israel and Iran after the U.S. entered that conflict with Israel against Iran with the nuclear strikes. And so having calmed the fighting there, I think he and many others see this as a moment to really pivot attention to Gaza and to finally bring an end to 21 months of just devastating violence in that strip there. And so the president is projecting optimism that a ceasefire could be close. He said he didn't think there was any holdup, that things are going along very well. But in reality, we know that the central sticking point remains, which is that Hamas wants a full end to the war in these negotiations in exchange for the remaining hostages. And Israeli leadership has not backed away from saying that Hamas needs to be eliminated, that is their ultimate objective there. Those two things do not go together, and that remains the sticking point that has always prevented the next phase of a ceasefire, the next phase of hostages being able to be released.
All right, let's shift focus here a little bit, go to the trade. 25 to 40% tariffs on major partners like South Korea and Japan, no small threat there. How are these countries reacting to these final offer letters?
Yeah, so South Korea's trade ministry said early this morning that it's going to accelerate negotiations with the U.S. to come up with a mutually beneficial deal before that 25% tax on its exports goes into effect. And that new date that it would go into effect is August 1st. The Japanese prime minister on Tuesday, early today, called President Trump's decision, quote, extremely regrettable, but said that the announced tariff rate was actually lower than what President Trump had previously threatened, and said that it would make it still possible to have further negotiations before the August 1st deadline. So neither of them is happy, but both of them are saying we're going to keep negotiating and try to come up with something before this deadline. And that is what we heard from the Treasury Secretary, who said that since this latest round of announcements came out, he said he's gotten a lot of other messages from people reaching out and saying, OK, let's come up with a deal. Certainly that's President Trump's approach to try to increase the pressure, and hope that that comes to an agreement before he actually has to follow through with these pretty punishing rates.
Yeah. President says he has deals coming, but Wall Street not exactly cheering that news. What's the administration's plan to ease the market jitters?
Yeah, so we saw stocks drop yesterday when all of the letters started coming out about these potentially high tariffs once again. It's been a while since we've been in that territory. Markets don't like that because that could increase prices for U.S. consumers. That could drive down buying power here in the U.S. It could just harm American businesses who have to pay to import whatever materials they might need, even if they're based here in the U.S., they might need to import materials from some of these countries and have more costs in the making. But that's where the Treasury Secretary came through and said, don't worry, this is going to be kind of short-term pain, that we're going to have trade deals. The markets like it when there are trade deals announced, because that means that these big sweeping tariffs don't actually go into effect. And so we're hearing promises from the administration that more of those are coming.
All right. Good stuff, Alice. Thanks so much. We'll see you again tomorrow.